Welcome to the Resolve series, a new virtual event series from Nexus Louisiana aimed at creating action-oriented conversations about equity and entrepreneurship. I'm Wendy Overton, your moderator for today's panel. So I have been running the Nexus Host account on the back end. So if you've seen comments from Nexus Host on our prior events, that has been in part me and also my counterpart, Lauren Castine. And I'll be moderating today, and I'm excited to actually talk with our panelists live today to wrap things up. Today we'll be focusing on what's next. We have had a lot of great conversation. We've had a lot of good insight from our panelists and from our chat and the survey responses. And we really wanted to begin to say, what are the things that we need to work on as a community? We've brought in some community ecosystem builders from around the country for this conversation to give us some fresh ideas and best practices and what works best and what it doesn't work as we craft a plan for the future. So first, I'd like to just share a little bit about Nexus Louisiana. We were founded by the state of Louisiana in the mid-90s with a mission to support tech-driven entrepreneurship. We have evolved into an organization that is supporting the work that we need to do right now to help Louisiana become nationally and globally competitive. We have 4 pillars of work. Our first pillar is accelerating tech-driven ventures. We do this by providing capital, coaching, and connections. We run an incubator right here on Florida Boulevard in Baton Rouge that tenants can receive a local physical business place and an opportunity zone, and they receive advisory services from our expert staff. We also provide those venture advisory services to virtual clients, so clients that have decided that they've got another facility, but they do want to access those advisory services using a structure called Growth Wheel. Our second pillar is we help build the capital continuum. We spun off a 501c3 nonprofit seed fund several years ago called Innovation Catalyst. And this seed fund invests in early stage startups. We're helping solve that early access to seed capital for our Louisiana entrepreneurs. So we invest in startups around the state. And it's something that if any of you want to support that work, it is a nonprofit. So you don't have to be an accredited investor to make investments into that. And it is an evergreen fund. So as our startups grow and there's some sort of a liquidation event like a sale or going public, then those funds come right back to the fund. They're not returned to investors, and we're able to then reinvest it and keep that cycle going. Innovation Catalyst has also recently started a community of local investors called the Red Stick Angels. There's angel networks and communities all around the nation. In Baton Rouge, we did not have one, so we're very proud that we have started that. And we did have our CEO of Innovation Catalyst, who is running Red Stick Angels. He was on our panel on Tuesday, and you can watch the video of this after this event if you want to get caught up on that conversation about access to capital. I do want to make a point, and we can discuss this more deeply in our panel today, that we are looking to add women and minority investors to that angel fund. So if you want to know more, please do reach out. You can click on the I want to get involved, and we'll walk you through that. We are developing curriculum and training opportunities to help new investors learn the lingo and become more capable and competent and confident about their investing capabilities. We also have an investment readiness program. This is something that you may not know about, but it is something that we will work with an entrepreneur to get them ready to seek investment. We also advise them about whether or not investment's the right option for them. Sometimes there's other options that are better, and we want to make sure that they're prepared for the ride that seeking investment is. There's other ways that are just different, that one is not better than the other, but we want to make sure that you're ready for it. And when you do seek investment, you know exactly what you're getting into, so you can best position your company in order to get the best term sheet and the best outcome for those investments. Our third pillar, and this is part of what we're doing right here with this particular event, is we are creating an inclusive ecosystem. We meet regularly with other ecosystem providers such as ourselves throughout the community, Metromorphosis, BRAC, the North Baton Rouge Economic Development Organization, Southern University, Gramblings, and LSU, SBDC, SCORE. And if I've forgotten any of you, then please, I apologize in advance. But we do meet regularly with these ecosystem providers because we want to make it easier for an entrepreneur to navigate our system and find the help they need. Plus, we also want to make sure that every entrepreneur, regardless of their background, their race, their culture, their gender, feels like they've got the help they need and a supportive place for them to launch and grow their business. We also work with HBCUs around the state. We have an entrepreneurship program that supports our 6 historically Black colleges and universities around the state. And this program takes the shape of a pitch competition, matching them to mentors, working with students who have ventures that do want support. And we also have a summer deep dive intensive. We've been doing this work for about 5 years, and we're looking for ways to continue to augment and scale that work. So if you're interested in helping mentor and support the work for our talent at the historically Black colleges and universities, you can fill out the green call to action form and let us know that you do want to get involved in that. Our 4th pillar is developing the tech workforce, and we do this through a tech apprenticeship program called Apprenti. And this is a national program, and we have the entire state charter to run this program. So we serve the needs of employers around the state to find the tech talent that they need. It's one of the main issues that we hear over and over again from our small businesses, from our startup entrepreneurs, and from our companies, that it's hard to find the tech talent. What's unique about the Apprenti program is that we do not look at the background. So it doesn't require a degree in tech. It doesn't require past history in tech. There is a proprietary assessment that looks for the aptitude to learn technical skills, and therefore it becomes a way to reduce the barriers and increase access for women and minorities and others who want to enter the tech workforce. Across the nation, Apprenti has a very successful track record of being an entry point for women and minorities into the tech workforce, and we're seeing the same results right here. If you're interested in learning more about that, obviously click our call to action button at the bottom and do let us know. Either you're an employer looking to hire tech talent and you want to know more, or if you are a person who wants to enter the tech workforce, please let us know. So before we go on, I do want to thank our sponsors. The Resolve series was sponsored by 2 very generous sponsors in our community, SLT Technology Incorporated and ExxonMobil. They both were on our panel yesterday, so they had some interesting conversations about why they chose to sponsor this event. We're very grateful for their support, and we can only do the programming that we do with the support of generous sponsors like that. So a little bit about the event and how this is going to flow. This is the 4th event in our series. We started with a loose roundtable a couple weeks ago, where we just had a discussion that discussed access to capital and the networks and the barriers to networks that people may have. We discussed a little bit about the barriers to entrepreneurship that are there and the things that are needed. And then we have spent this week exploring those topics more in depth. Today, our hope is that we can focus on action steps for the future. We want to take action as a community, as an ecosystem provider, as members of the community, as entrepreneurs. No matter who we are, we do want everyone to kind of get a sense of the things that they can do in order to make our ecosystem more equitable. There is a lack of there is definite disparities in access to capital and contracts and other types of support that are needed for success in entrepreneurship. And we want to discuss those and find ways to break those down. So while our panelists are discussing here on stage, please do feel free to interact via the chat, polls, and Q&A. You'll see the chat is on the right side of your screen. There'll be polls occasionally through the session. And our Q&A, you can see that you can add things as questions, but you can also comment and upvote. So you can actually interact via those questions as well. We do encourage you to do that. Like I've mentioned several times already, the work doesn't end here. The effort needs everyone involved, and we want to make sure to get resources to entrepreneurs. That I want to get involved button also has a way for our entrepreneurs to ask for help. So while we support tech ventures, like I said, we do work with other resource providers. And so if you will let us know what your needs are, we'll match you and make a warm introduction to these other resource providers and hopefully get you the help that you need as quickly as possible. So let's welcome the rest of our panelists to the stage today. So today we'll have entrepreneur David Facey, founder of Sellswipe, but also many other things, which we'll discuss a little bit in our work today. Faye Horwitt, she's president of Forward Cities. Faye works with communities around the nation to help them build more inclusive ecosystems. So I brought her here as an expert who has a lot of great knowledge for what's working in other communities, and we can access that as we're starting to discuss these problems and solutions. Jerry Jones, he's executive director of Impact Baton Rouge. They're focused on creating equity and opportunity up in the North Baton Rouge area. Kenyatta Sparks, program manager at SJB Group. He works to, and I'll let him introduce his work a little bit more, but Kenyatta does work with helping small businesses become certified and be able to access contract opportunities with the government. And Paulo Gregory, he's the founder of COHADO Inc., and he's an ecosystem such as myself, located in Baltimore, and he's very wise. Faye and Paulo, I work with on the Intercultural Unity Committee for a community of ecosystem builders called the Startup Champions Network. So I've worked with them regarding finding ways that we can help create programs that support ecosystems around the nation, and Paulo has great wisdom on ways to create inclusive ecosystems. So I'm going to welcome out here. Welcome everybody. I'm so glad to see you. And we are missing, who are we missing? We're missing Paulo. But we will get started first. So let's just get started with some introductions. I gave a very brief introduction, but I'd love to hear from each one of you guys a little bit about yourself and your work. So Kenyatta, do you want to get started?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so myself, once again, and I appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on the platform. For as ourselves, SJB Group, we have over 20 years of experience of managing the DBE Supported Services Program for our state, and then we also held it for a few years for the state of Mississippi as well. With that, we just work more as the liaisons between the federal agencies that have the certifying, that can certify the DBE, or the firms that are interested in getting certified, which is mainly minority, women, or veteran-owned firms. We help in those facilitating efforts by providing technical assistance with the firms once they're certified. All of our services are free because one of the things that we attempt to do is to fill in those gaps that prevents them from normally being really prepared all the way around as far as in their pursuit of any of these projects that have a goal, a DB goal, or that may not have it. Right now, our contract is currently with the Compliance Programs Office at DOTD. However, because they're the governing agency, we offer services to all of the certified firms within our region. And our region covers Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Lake Charles, Alexandria, Shreveport, and Monroe. I'd be a little reluctant when I start talking about the type of services because a lot of individuals tend to focus solely on those things that I mentioned. My best way of addressing it is that any type of assistance you need, give us a call because we have the ability to do a lot of it in-house, which allows us to do everything for free. But because we have this ecosystem of other resource agencies that we partner with, we can actually complement one another. We can get a little bit more in depth with our assistance because of who we are and what we can do. So a lot of times those resource agencies that are now gaining more knowledge of who we are and what we offer, they're recommended those firms contact us. And we start from the beginning. We don't certify. Obviously, the three agencies in Louisiana that certify for the DB program is DOTD, and then you have the Louis Armstrong Airport in New Orleans, and then you also have RTA in New Orleans. And the reason why those are the three agencies, because the DBE program is a federal program, so they put goals on projects that have any type of federal assistance, funding assistance. So DOTD would be Federal Highway, Louis Armstrong Airport would be Federal Aviation, and Federal Transit Authority would be RTA. And, so once again, those agencies do the certification. However, we help them prepare the application. We review the application before they submit it in, make sure they got all the proper supporting documents, assist them in getting prepared for their on-site interview. And then from there, once they're certified, that's where it's really an advantageous, it's more of the advantageous reason of why they should get certified. I don't never recommend for anyone to get certified just to get a whole lot of work, because the structure is still the same. You still have to go through the same process. The bidding process is not going to just open up the floodgates or you're certified, because this is not a set aside type function. It doesn't work like that. It still is where the lowest bidder. Obviously, it does give you some advantage when you are certified, though. So to help them be prepared for that, we attack a lot of those areas where they have deficiencies or some intimidation, which is that back office side, because a lot of them are great with the work. So we really address those areas. So we do a needs assessment so we can find out where they're currently at and put together a proper roadmap to get them to where their end result is. And that's being able to remove that disadvantage from the title and really be seen as a qualified firm that can provide quality work and in a quality amount of time. So as we go throughout this, obviously I can pinpoint more of the type of services if there's questions, but I don't want to take too much of the introductory period. So.
Thanks so much, Kenyatta. I appreciate that. Yes, we talked a little bit yesterday about the need for capacity building, and I think that's a really important topic. David, do you want to introduce us? And you've got a friend in the background too.
I do have a friend. I'll introduce him in a second. But my name is David Facey, serial entrepreneur, LSU grad, but I'm from Chicago. Worked as an alternative investment analyst and project in managerial consulting before I started my first startup. That company, we focus on connecting consumers with the locally owned and operated businesses near them. And we've noticed that a lot of those business owners, there are a lot of problems that they face. And so the goal of our company was to give them tech that helped them combat them challenges. But as we've evolved and grown, we pivoted to focusing on African-American owned businesses, though. So we recently launched a directory online, shopblack.io. It's one of the largest Black-owned directories on the internet. And we're focused on creating a framework that helps these minority businesses. I'll let David talk about that a little bit. And we also recently launched another tech company that's focused on helping. It's a comp to Eventbrite though, but we help promoters interface more effectively with people that are trying to attend their events, and we help patrons try to find the right events for them as well. So. And this is David Jones, my CMO for every company that I run.
Hey guys, how's it going? As he said, my name is David as well. And it's an honor and a blessing to be here with you guys. I've had a chance to catch some of the previous conversations that have happened here. They've been really enriching and informative. As David said, I handle marketing with a lot of the projects that he and I have been involved with entrepreneurially. And I'm super excited about the recent work we've been doing with our Shop Black brand and platform that is a directory of 10,000 plus Black businesses across the United States and beyond. We really have an emphasis on trying to cultivate culture and values and trying to keep Black businesses and entrepreneurship top of mind in people's and heads, and also with their purchasing decisions and their dollars. So we've been doing a really grassroots hybridized campaign on the internet, and also interfacing with organizations, et cetera, across the country that have a emphasis on focusing on those things. And we hope that today we can chit chat a little bit more about our insights and also learn from everybody here that I know is going to bring some really great information. So thanks for having me on as well.
Great, welcome. Paulo, welcome from Baltimore.
It's good to be here. Good to be with you all. What a beautiful group of panelists to spend this time with. So I'm Paulo Gregory. I'm the founder and CEO of COHADO Inc., which is a company that focuses really on two dimensions of the same thing. We've created a platform that is all about maximizing assets for the community and minimizing waste in any way, shape, or form, whether it's ecologically or waste in our communities and neighborhoods where folks are struggling. And the platform is both literally a game, and it's also a strategic thinking system, strategic design system that helps folks develop collaborative enterprises or collaborative ecosystems that are really about shared power and belonging, and really focus on how do you bring people together to work collaboratively towards a goal, and focused much more on ecosystem than what we call ecosystem. And that's the only way to really lean into this work. So we can talk more about that, but that's the primary work I do. I also want to mention that we're working with Facey here in Baltimore on supporting a project which is called the eShip Communities Initiative, which was founded by Kauffman Foundation and is stewarded and facilitated by Facey's organization, Forward Cities. And we're working here in Baltimore to create and evolve an ecosystem to support Black entrepreneurship in a city where we have more than 70% Black folks and almost no viable business structure for Black enterprise. So trying to shift that paradigm, and the work with Facey is beautiful. So
nice. I'm glad you gave her the shout out. I'm excited that she's able to join us. Facey, do you want to go ahead and go next?
Yeah, I have to now that I got called out. So great to be with you all, and it is an honor to work with Paulo on the eShip Baltimore engagement. That is one of the many cities that Forward Cities works in around the country. 4 cities with the eShip communities engagement, and then we work in a group of other cities around the country. I was really interested to see folks in the chat talking about not using the word disadvantaged and language, how much language matters. And that our work is really, it's a good way to sort of start to talk about what I do. And our work is, we actually really flip the conversation from seeing entrepreneurs as disadvantaged or the fault being with them, and flip it to figure out what are the barriers that they actually address to keep them from fully achieving what they're capable of. And so we look at it from an ecosystem perspective of what are the entrepreneurial support organizations and the different support systems. How are they not working well together, or what about them is creating barriers for those entrepreneurs, and how can we work with those folks to improve the system so that it actually eliminates the barriers and helps to leverage the assets of these communities and of these people groups, because we have so much to provide and give. And so we place full-time ecosystem builders, hire local folks like Paulo in communities to help guide that work. And then we go in and approach it first off with data and discovery. So very human-centered, wanting to understand what the challenges are that entrepreneurs are facing, how and why the organizations that support them are showing up and how they're not, how they are working together or not. And then we convene the stakeholders together. We do sense making related to that data and help them to co-design solutions for how to address the barriers and or to leverage the assets of entrepreneurs and communities. And then on the back end, we evaluate what's working, and we help them learn how to measure the health and equity of their own ecosystems and provide them with the capacity to do this work on their own going forward. Our goal is really to model what's possible so that they can then carry it forward. So excited about that work across the country. It is in many ways groundbreaking, because we're not putting the fault on the entrepreneur and trying to fix what's broken in them. We're trying to fix the system that they are functioning within, so that they can thrive. So.
Thank you, Faye. I appreciate those words of insight. And perfect segue to our final introduction, which is Jerry Jones. And so Jerry is involved in ecosystem building, such as ourselves, and he's also on our board. So we've got kind of he's able to have a nice bridging influence regarding his work and then the work that we're doing here. So Jerry, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, good morning. My name is Jerry Jones. I'm the executive director of Impact North Baton Rouge, which is also called Baton Rouge North Economic Development District. The length of that name is the reason why we went with Impact North Baton Rouge, of course. I have a postgraduate certifications, but the most important degree is the one from Southern University. I am a member of several different organizations. One of the ones that I enjoy the most is this particular board, serving on this board. Nexus Louisiana is doing a fantastic job. I'm just so excited for our staff as to what they're doing to respond to businesses post-COVID. My background is very, very, very long, which is strange to be 37 years old. I've been a councilman. I have served as an economic developer in the Lake Charles area, in St. John the Baptist Parish, here in East Baton Rouge Parish, and I'm probably forgetting somewhere else. Serve on several different boards, like I said, that deals with small business development. Currently the executive director of Impact North Baton Rouge, that deals with everything that deals with housing, community development, economic development, small business development that takes place in North Baton Rouge. And I constantly have to remind people that I work in North Baton Rouge because unlike our organization's incorporated documentation, most citizens do not see streets as barriers. They see them as roadways to travel on. And so me sharing with them that they're not help does not work. They still want the assistance. And so we typically end up finding ourselves working for anyone and everyone that contacts us. So happy to be on here and looking forward to hearing some really informative news.
Fantastic, fantastic. So a little bit of breaking the ice personally. I'd love to know from you guys, what is something that you've personally become aware of over the past 6 months? We've had a lot of things happen the past 3 months, 6 months, et cetera. And I would just love to hear you guys share a little bit of your own personal journey over this time and something that you've learned yourself about yourself or your consciousness. And I will leave that open to whoever's bold enough to go first. I see a lot of people looking at each other.
I was hoping that either Kenyatta or David was going to go first, but no one seems to have pressed the unmute button. I have learned that being stuck in the house has caused me to decide to do two things. And that is, one, get a pet, get a dog, and two, start to really dig in on my personal finances and start to look at developing my own business on the side and my brand as a person, and that has really that's really been something that I can say that I didn't let this pandemic be in vain, so to speak. This time away from the office of and not really doing the work. So aside from being creative and being on more Zoom calls than the law should allow, that was something that I really benefited from.
Sounds great. Anyone else want to
Yes, let me
share?
go next.
All right.
Yeah, I think, the being cooped up in the house, as an entrepreneur, you see so many opportunities arising during this time, right, with COVID and everything. And it's, I've got more startups than I have fingers right now that I've got my hands on. So juggling the time, though, understanding time management has kind of been something where my head has been at. But we've learned a lot of stuff with our efforts with Shop Black, and I'll let David talk on that.
Yeah, one of the things that was super challenging for us internally, and just our aim to try to elevate the community and try to cultivate more of culture and put the value on small business during this really challenging time. About a month ago, an article came out from Forbes that says statistically 50% of all Black-owned small businesses had permanently shuttered. And when you think about it from the context of us just being entrepreneurs and being young Black entrepreneurs, trying to carve out a new space for ourselves, but also trying to put an emphasis on elevating the community as a whole, we got a lot of work to do. And so we're kind of in a space where we're thankful for the skills and the knowledge and the resources that we have to help us to kind of weather the storm in this moment, but also trying to stretch our thinking and our capacity and our hearts for other people who may be struggling because of a lack of access to knowledge and resources and information, and also bridging the information gap between folks who want to help and want to engage with small businesses, specifically with minorities, indigenous folks, people of color, not being able to effectively communicate or understand what those offerings are that those businesses have. So got a lot of work to do, but we're excited to roll up our sleeves and see what we can do to make an impact.
Who you said you needed to say something, Wendy?
No,
Oh.
just saying thank you.
For myself, I can't really say anything about what I learned by being at home, because we never shut down. Our firm has stayed open the entire time. So I guess I can't really say I've had more time to learn more about myself personally, because I've been steady going. From a business side, though, it just I've learned more about collaborative efforts. Obviously, because we can't be in person a lot, it gives me a lot more time to become more creative on where we can fill those gaps. As far as on, like I was saying earlier, how we can complement each other in the services that we provide. Obviously, we're able to attack a lot more because just like Jerry said, man, these Zoom meetings, these WebEx meetings, you get 4 or 5 done in a day. You don't have travel time, so you can maximize that, and it's shown. Obviously, a lot of the things that's going on with the economic disaster loans that's available, other financing assistance, the smaller firms are recognizing that their unpreparedness is really being exposed because they're missing out on those opportunities. So it gives us this platform even more so now to attack those areas, because now visually they can see what we've been anticipating, preparing them for, even when we didn't have the trying times as now. So those are some of the things that I've really been able to focus on more, and which has led me to this opportunity with you all, just by way of being invited to with the kickoff meeting. So I think that's the biggest thing I can take from what's going on right now doing with COVID. And obviously there's a ton of other topics, but just to stay on point of what our discussion is today, I feel that's why I feel the most growth I've seen right now for as myself.
Good.
Yeah, I'll hop in. I will say it's been a very, very odd time for me. Paulo will know this. I probably traveled in communities probably about 70% of my time before COVID, and really getting to touch and see entrepreneurs and the people that serve them on a regular basis in community, and facilitating those conversations was what drove me in many ways. And so not being in those settings in real time and has really helped me to understand what are the roots of of community and relationship, and that it is not necessarily place. It's not all based on place. It's based on relationship. And how do you learning how to cultivate relationships in new ways, and how to keep people engaged and connected to one another when place is not the center point, is not the gathering. What is the focus of the gathering? And so for me as an individual who loves facilitation, and for us as an organization, learning new skills in facilitating, learning how to keep people engaged in a digital format. How do you get people to continue to lean into their creativity? How do you get people brainstorming in real time in this way? And what are the tools that are available for us to do that? So exploring all those kinds of things, because if we can help figure out some of those things, those are methods and best practices that we can share out with our communities as well.
I think for me, it's been also very interesting because a lot of my work has been sort of out in the community, and being hunkered down has very much changed that. But I also realized that the work that we've been gearing up to do with COHADO and the other work I've been doing was really almost waiting for a time like this, where people would wake up to the injustice that has been going on for 400 years and say, oh, what can we do about this? And, so I think it's a real time for us to be able to step. And we've been thinking about what the future looks like, for this whole time. And the future is not going to look the same. So I think it offers us all an opportunity to shape a future that does not go back to the way things are, but goes forward to the way things should be.
Thanks, Paulo. That's actually that's actually related to something that I want to personally share. For the past, probably at least 10 years, I've constantly been doing a lot of peeling away the onions of the onion layers of myself to find out what makes me tick and how do I think and work and where does this emotion come from. And I think that the past 6 months has been incredibly productive on that personal journey, where it's give me the time, where it's not the rush beating traffic and everything, trying to always always race around and fight with the rest of the city to beat the traffic to get to work, et cetera, where it was a little bit extra time on, bookending of my day and those lunch times, where there's a little bit more time to kind of be human, be real, be here, be myself, be with my family. And I think that was it kind of a impetus for me to really understand a lot more about the human experience. But I say this because I feel like there is collectively there's something that we collectively as a nation have not done a good job at, and that is to grieve, to truly allow compassionate grieving for us individually and collectively to be able to address those things. And I was very moved when I saw the safe spaces that were created about a month ago when sorry, I've lost my place in the notes. The safe places that were created when Chadwick Boseman died. For those of you that aren't familiar with the name, you probably know who he is. He's the actor that played King T'Challa in the Black Panther movies. And I found that the safe places that were happening to allow people to grieve that loss, I feel was something that I felt like it was we are growing up as a community to be able to allow those safe places to happen, because we have to make it safe for people to be upset, to be sad, to feel loss, and to digest it, to transform it, and to eventually move through it and understand that it's okay to have those deep human emotions. And I feel like the phase that we've been in the past 6 months, there's been a little bit more of that, where we've been able to create those spaces. And so that to me has been both very moving and encouraging, but it's also part of my own personal journey of finding kind of those deeper layers of what makes me me and how I work, et cetera. Before we get started, there is something that on that journey that it was a point of awareness that I actually specifically asked Paulo about, where I've been in this work of inclusion of the community in different forms for about 10 years, not really directly in the early stages, but the past 2 years I'm doing much more direct work and working with the HBCUs and other things like that. But it's informed a lot of my work over the past 10 years in general, but more specifically. But there was always this unsettled feeling within myself of, am I doing this right? Like, is this okay? Are these conversations I can have? Can I, talk about Black entrepreneurship? Is it okay that I'm a white woman doing these things? So I asked Paulo on a one-to-one conversation about that very thing. And he shared something to me that was very encouraging, and it's very human. And I feel like it's something that I wanted to speak to any of our audience that is not Black, that is part of this and wants to be part of the solution, about the better way of approaching this work. So Paulo, if you want to actually share your thoughts on it, I would love that.
Sure, happy to. Is it possible to share screen? Because I can get a little assistance from a couple of presentations, slides I have. I'll try. I'll hit share screen. It says too many video sources. Okay, so we'll just talk it through. We've hit the max, which is a great sign. I see 123 people in this space, so well done, Nexus. I think, what was coming up in the conversation that Wendy and I had was, and I hear this a lot and I've heard this a whole lot in the last 5-6 months, is this desire for folks to, white folks in particular, to get it right. Like, how do I get this right? How do I be the right kind of ally? How do I not do damage? And people have been coming directly to me and asking a lot about this. And in my experience, and have done a bunch of work around this, there's two different ways. Of course, there's an infinite number of ways, but two different ways that I see people approaching the way they're being in the world. And I think in the Western culture, the white dominated culture, but really before all that, the male culture has been all about this paradigm of being a winner and being a loser, and also this, how do I win? And underneath that is, how do I make sure that I show up as if I am perfect? And it's this, what I call the perfection syndrome. And it means that I don't want to make a mistake. I want to make sure that I get it exactly right. And the other paradigm that I talk about is really a paradigm of learning. I believe that we are all here on this planet not to get it right, but we're here on the planet to learn. And if we're really committed to learning, if you are getting it right, it means you already know it. And it means that you're therefore not learning. So mistakes are the doorway to transformation, to getting to a different level of understanding. In other words, learning. And it's really, I'll tell you a quick story. When my son was young, he was just getting to that stage of learning to ride a bicycle. And we had the training wheels and all that going, and he was doing fast and moving around on his training wheels. And I said, okay, it's time to take off the training wheels. And I think in many cases, it's time for America to take off our training wheels and really start doing something too. And so we took the training wheels off, and he got on the bike, and I was holding him by the waist and helping him move, and he was like doing okay. And so at that point, there's this point at which you let go. and they start moving on their own. And unfortunately, I made the mistake of letting him know I let go. And so I let go, and we're on grass. He's totally safe, but I let go, and he looks back, and of course he falls down, and he starts screaming and crying and yelling and saying he's not going to get on the bike again. This is terrible. This is the worst thing ever. And I looked at him and I said, oh, well, you only have 99 falls left to go before you learn to ride your bike. And he said, 99 falls? I said, yeah, you've done one, takes 100. And he goes, okay. So he gets on the bike, and soon he was throwing himself on the ground so he'd get to that 100. And as he was doing that, he started riding, and he probably made it to like 15 times falling before he was actually riding. And I think it's that sort of pivoting in our minds of what is falling. You know, falling is a way of saying, okay, this is out of balance. How do I bring balance? But if you don't ever put yourself in a circumstance where you're going to get it wrong, then you're not going to learn that process. And I think the real skill that we're talking about is the skill of being vulnerable. Like, how do you be vulnerable and get it wrong? And that's really hard for dudes. And I think it's really hard for folks in the Western world because we've been so penalized. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to make a mistake. You get into a conversation and you say something like, well, you know, my ancestors came from another place and we're doing just fine. What's wrong with you folk from Africa, right? And so you ask a question like that. And so folks who don't ask that question will never understand what's under the structural racism that's in this country. And so we have to be vulnerable and ask those questions and not worry about getting it wrong, but really worried about learning. So I'll leave that there.
Can I hop in, Wendy?
You're muted,
You're
Wendy.
muted, Wendy.
Yes, of
Can
course.
I hop in there?
Yes.
So I wholeheartedly, I like the way you put that together. I have a lot of friends who find themselves, and they are of different races and even nationalities that I create. And we were talking about safe spaces. I am a person that allows people to come and ask me all kinds of questions, and sometimes I ask myself, why did I make everybody so comfortable? Because then they want to come ask you everything. But I believe that you create safe spaces in order for people to get it right. We are a country that has always geared towards perfection, right? Especially when it comes to the male, dominating culture of getting it right. You're either the winner or you're the loser. There is no such thing as being excited about second, third, or fourth place, because the only place that matters is first place. Those types of cultures really are what I call the foundation of demeaning true progress in not only in this country but in the space of equity. Because I saw this diagram, this picture. It showed that for so long people have fought for equality. Equality just means that everybody gets the same step stool, no matter how tall or short they may be. Equity means that you are going to contour that stool to the point to where everybody gets a start, an equal opportunity start. And I think people get really caught up in how am I saying the wrong things, or am I doing the wrong things towards this opportunity to create equity in communities? I've said this, and I'm going to be quiet. I've said this numerous times. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, and that is in the city of Baton Rouge, you cannot, I've never seen anybody walk up to a mirror and have muscles on one side of their body, on their arm and their legs, and then be puny and out of shape on the other side and want to put it on an Instagram picture, okay? I've never seen anybody who wanted to post that picture on their page. So we as a community need to make sure that all of sides of us are looking great, because no one cares about what's north and what's south. When someone comes to Baton Rouge, when somebody comes to this community, they see Baton Rouge. They don't walk away saying, oh, that was just the northern side of the city. We have to be intentional about that as we relate to business. And I think it's the intentionality for me as to how people try to work across racial lines and gender lines. I think for me, that's the intentionality is what I always look for. I just really think that we need to be very cognitive of the overall picture of how things look, because as a community, you're not going to look attractive or be seen as attractive to anyone, not even yourself, if you're not completely whole as a person, as well as a community, and as well as an ecosystem for small businesses.
There we go. So that actually brings me to we're about ready to head to the Q&A, and I do want to get to the meat of this, but there's two topics that I want to discuss. One is, what does our final endpoint look like? Like, let's talk about the end result. What do we think that we're actually all working towards? And that's part of like that COHADO game is about, or strategy. It's about collaborating to make sure that you maximize the opportunities for everybody that's involved. And then also more specifically, what are those barriers that are in our way to get there? And those are things that that will create action steps from a community standpoint to say, how do we address those barriers there? So collectively, let's just kind of address both of those conversations together and start to describe what we're going towards and what's blocking us from getting there. Who wants to go? Kenyatta.
Hey, I'm gonna just say on the first part of that question, and I wanted to point out also that Ms. Faye made a great point because of the mindset when we're talking about the DBE. You know, obviously that's a sector that I'm really strong in. So most of my my talking points are going to be targeted toward that. So I've never really cared for that that name either, because I think it just starts off with the presidents that they're underqualified to be able to do or provide the services that they're chasing. However, for myself, I don't sit in that seat to be able to change that that name. But what I can do is be proactive in helping those small businesses when they sitting at the table, that they're no longer seen as that. How do I do that? By when I'm networking with these prime contractors or individuals that's making the decisions, I bring those up as talking points to be able to address it. But the only way I can make sure that I'm addressing it properly on their behalf is providing them all of the assistance that they need, to where when someone approaches them, they're not approaching them because they're a DBE firm. They're not chasing a project because they can satisfy a goal. They're approaching it because they see them as a quality business, not even a small business, someone who can actually bring tangible products and services to what their ultimate goal is. So those are the things in which, you know, I task myself with on a daily basis. If anybody that's part of this program knows, they're going to know who I am before they even meet me, because I'm sending out massive information to them on a daily basis, whether it's project opportunities, whether it's events like this or anything that we're hosting. I'm filling in those gaps because I want to remove that notion of that term. But I think that leads into us being able to get to what your second part is, and that's getting to the end result. So first and foremost, I'm always finding the creative ways of getting them to be more confident in what they are able to do outside of just the labor aspect. And we feeling, and I think we're with having 20 years of experience in this position, as a firm, it's obvious that we must be doing a pretty good job of doing that. But that's collectively with the individuals that we have on here now, as well as the other agencies that I've been privy to collaborate with. So I think that's the biggest standpoint for myself is covering those areas of deficiencies for them, and not just waiting for them to say that it's a problem. Because I speak to them enough on a daily basis to know what the main three areas that they are having challenges in. And I think by addressing those things, it will remove the people from just looking at it from what program they're in. We don't want to box them into being a DBE or a minority-owned business or a woman-owned business. We want to, man, look, this is the name of my company. This is the services I provide. This is what we want to do going forward. And that's just, I think that can attack that first part of your question. And I thoroughly believe that will get to the end result of us all being able to work together to help it at the end. There's more opportunities, because I think we can all agree when you have more successful business, that's automatically going to have a direct impact on the economic development in any areas. I've been, once again, we've managed this program for years. I'm excited about the fact that the city of Baton Rouge is in the process of developing a program for itself. That's not the tell-all. That's not the end. There's a lot of preparation that's still going to be involved in the in-between, but at least there's some traction moving that's going to allow them to be able to position themselves for more opportunities, right, just by way of them being able to put something out there that has the proper ordinances in place, the proper teaming and staffing in place, because that's huge. We can do everything we can on our part, but if we don't have the right leadership in place, then we're not going to get it. And I think those things have been evident right now within the city of what they're attempting to do. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there real quick, because I love the point. It's what Ms. Faye had said earlier. They're looking for the areas to attack to change the system. So they're changing the system in that aspect, but we also want to have the impact on the firms themselves. So right, once the system is changed, everything is automatically flowing in the same direction, whereas we're not fixing one problem and then got a mountain to climb in the other area. So I think when we collaborate like that, that's how we get the end result collectively at the same time, because that'll cause a much larger explosion in my take.
Right. So helping grow great firms and making sure that they have the capacity.
Yeah.
I'll also jump in here. I think it's when I think about what are we ultimately aiming for, that's why I think the ultimate goal is equity, and I think that's where people sometimes get it mixed up. We were doing our work. Forward Cities was for several years, and one of the things we would offer at our national conference was racial equity training. And so people would go in the racial equity training. They would understand the historical nature of structural racism, why it exists, its impacts on all areas of society and life. And then they would walk out of it and go, okay, but what do I do? I get it. Now tell me, what do I do about it? And so we actually started really thinking about how do we change the way people are thinking about this stuff beyond DEI? Because, originally diversity and inclusion, the challenge is that that's only thinking about what people can do to include other people, right? So it's still this idea of you have to be allowed to do something. You have to be let in. Someone has to give you the opportunity. You have to be included. And so it's still that originally was the wrong framing, right? And so even when you add equity in, people thought, okay, it's DEI. Now we got it. No, we don't got it, because it's still that you don't know how to achieve the E. You don't know what it is that you need to do to get there. And so, Forward Cities started thinking about what are those ingredients that get you to E. And we came up with a framework called Abide. and I'll drop in a link in here, but the acronym stands for Access, Belonging, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. And equity being last, because the A, B, I, and D are how you get there. And so there's a lot of this idea of you have to make sure that you're providing the same access to opportunities. And what does that look like? You have to make sure that you are being intentionally inclusive, not by accident. You are, and that includes from top down, from board to your staff, how your culture, how you are designing things, your programming, and then from a belonging standpoint, it's about the fact that you have to accept that you don't have to necessarily be the place that welcomes others. You may need to go somewhere else, right? So it's not about necessarily saying, hey, this white co-working space has to figure out we have to check the box. We have to make sure that we have a certain percentage of Black entrepreneurs. And let's go get a grant so that we can do that. Guess what? There are Black co-working spaces that should be getting that grant. And how can we make sure that we are equitably funding spaces where entrepreneurs of certain communities can caucus and where they can have the same level of resources? And then, if you're able to put all these things together in a way that is increasingly intentional, that's how you get to equity. And it is not by accident. And so I think that there's a lot of intentional design that needs to happen in organizations and in companies in order to get there.
Thank you, Faye. And actually, I do want to get to our questions, but I want to take what you've just said, and I want to invite David and David to comment on their personal experience as entrepreneurs. They've been entrepreneurs in this community for quite a while, and I'd like to hear their experience and the thoughts on what Faye just said.
I mean, it's going to be difficult for me to follow up after what Faye said. I think she hit the nail on the head completely with what she was talking about. But being here in the city of Baton Rouge, especially with the Sellswipe project and working with small businesses and trying to really get boots on the ground and figure out where the holes are, where we can find that opportunity. I think where we're at right now today on the other side of the coin holistically is recognizing that specifically as like minorities and Black people, there is so much opportunity that we have within our community that is not being brought to the surface because we haven't done an equally good job of shifting our mindset and developing those things within. So our framework at Shop Black is really all about trying to take the best of what we are, the resources and the businesses and all of these different things that we have, and trying to build accessibility within community so that we can be prepared when the opportunities and other things arise on the other side. So to Faye's point, like we definitely need a more holistic understanding that equity is a stepwise approach, that many people are missing certain steps to actually get there and do it properly. And then within our community, I feel like we have to do a better job of cultivating and enriching our community to be prepared for those opportunities when equity actually arrives. So yeah, that's kind of the experience that we've had here in Baton Rouge. It's not really been much of that for us, especially being young and Black and having to, I guess, kind of manufacture the things that we saw that we wish we had is a big goal of ours moving forward.
Me, I'm going to be a little bit more off of the chest with it. What I want the end state to look like, what we're working for. I think open lines of communication is something that we want in the end game. Accountability, right? That the people that are decision makers that, are, head of, at the table is that they're being held accountable for the things they say, the things they're going to promise, their actions, right? That we have funds, right? But what are the end results? A lot of times I think entrepreneurs, getting money is being successful. No, you actually having a liquidity event is being successful, right? So you can give me money all day, but how do you drive me to success, right? And so one thing in my own entrepreneurial journey that I learned is like, the money, that's great, but there's so many other things people could have contributed that would have done more than the actual money, right? It's not just giving a check. Capital is important though, but networks, subject matter experts, there's this big thing that I've learned. You don't reinvent the wheel as an entrepreneur. Like, you're going to create something different that's not a wheel, right? But you don't want to replicate processes that people have already done, right? You want to leverage that learning there. And in that end game or end state, I think it's important that within our culture, within our community, that the people that have that experience are keeping it here and are sharing it with other people, right? It might have taken me 4 years to learn some of the things I have, but there's no reason another Black entrepreneur should take 4 years to get to the same point I got, right? Like, that knowledge transfer is going to be really important though. And I think, it's from a Black person's perspective, you're going to have things that you'll see Black, but a white person, they won't see it the same way. But there's still valuable experience that, people have in general. So being able to share that experience in a safe place, kind of what you talked about, Wendy, like, we need more safe places to have these conversations. We need safe places to hold people accountable. We need safe places to communicate to each other. And we need safe places just to share these experiences, right? So I think there's a onus on me as an African American here in the city, though, to make sure that I'm sharing my learnings and knowledge with other entrepreneurs, right? That, there's a lot of silos in a place like Baton Rouge and Louisiana, right? You can just look at how Baton Rouge and New Orleans operate, right? But we have to break down a lot of those silos. And I think, that accountability portion is going to be really important for that. Does that make sense?
So
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Wendy. Oh, never mind.
Did you want to shift, or I wanted to build on what David was saying?
Well, let's build on what David's saying, and we'll get to the Q&A in
Okay,
just a few
cool.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, David. And I think that one of the things that I think about a lot is that that our culture, Black culture, is measured by a yardstick that is not our yardstick. And so we're always talking about, what is it that, how are you comparing to the white mainstream business culture, et cetera. And I think that, I look back on African heritage a lot, and I look at the word Ubuntu, which is a Zulu word that means we are responsible for each other's well-being. And it's really, we in America are not, as Africans in America, are not familiar with those words, but we have been executing those strategies, which has enabled us to be here now, given the level of oppression and literally torture that we've been experiencing. The only way we've been able to do that is by being a collective and being connected in community and having community support, not just seeing ourselves as individuals, but seeing ourselves as a collective. And I think that so much of the startup entrepreneurship world is all about individual founders and individualism. And it's not just there, it's the entire culture is a very individualistic culture. And I think as we begin to evolve in this new economic way, that I think that the ways we need to build things are very much like David was saying. It's not about us as individuals. It's about building a strong network of support that provides the access that you need, which may be very different than the kinds of access that other folks need from other communities. And also building structures like cooperative enterprises, like community-based supported enterprise, like not focusing on exiting as a strategy, because if you exit, then you pull all this money out of the community and where's the business? Looking at communities as places to build enterprises that are there to be lasting enterprises that will continue to support the community, and also as a legacy play for for future generations in your own family, but also in the community way. And so, you know, I actually even push against this equity model because, you know, it's like as if we're trying to get to the same place. If imagine Black folks have survived with all this pressure. Now imagine if that pressure was relieved. The places we would go would look more like where Chadwick and them live in Wakanda than it would look like what we have here, because the genius that I see in communities and the ability, the things that we've learned by just having to struggle and survive are going to take us to places that we have never been. So the equity model still is somebody else's yardstick. I want to lift the cap off and say, come on, let's resource the hell out of this. And this is true for women too. It's not exclusively Black folk. And you know, what would the cultures look like if we were actually given the space to execute our own visions and our own dreams? So I think we need to pull the whole lid off and look not as a comparative thing to white business, but really, you know, what are we going to create and how are we going to do that? I think it'll look very different.
You know what's great about that way of thinking too, Paulo, is the fact that there's I've been thinking about this with the pandemic response. People are like, "Oh my goodness, our businesses are closing. We don't have money to survive. What are we gonna do?" I'm like, "That's what we've been living in for forever." So, like, the fact that we have grown as a people, the resilience over our time as a people group in this country, to be able to withstand what we have withstood and still be standing and still be thriving and still able to push forward. To me, we are more advantaged to live in this current time than anyone else, and to thrive through it and beyond it, because we have endured so much worse than this.
Faye, you are spot on. I can't tell you how many businesses I have seen open during the month of March up to this very day in North Baton Rouge, and has been able to thrive in the weirdest environments when a lot of other places are struggling. And you know, I've had one business tell me, Jared, we've built everything we've had without doing any business with banks because the banks won't support us. So why are we going to go run to them now? We've done what we needed to do without the bank. So why would we? I'm not going to stop. And I had so many tell me that they were not going to apply for PPPs and POE and all the other acronyms, right? They said they weren't doing it because the time that it takes to apply and get denied, they could be selling their product and making money in order to survive. But we were talking about, like, what's the next step? I think communities need to be more progressive. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm typically by nature a conservative person, right? But I have spurts of progressive, progression in me, right? And so I was looking at what Asheville just recently did. Asheville came out, and this term normally makes everybody want to shut down whenever this word is said. So just bear with me. Just hold on. Don't break out running, okay? So Asheville passed a resolution and a program for reparations of African American people. So everybody calm down, take a deep breath. Kind of, when you say that word, it gets real tight in any space. So
not in this space right here.
What they did was, they're not saying that they're going to go around and do as the president and want to cut stimulus checks. That's not what they're saying, okay? What they're saying is they wanted to go and build the programs and the infrastructure that will allow those businesses and that community, the African American community, to be able to soar in what we were talking about just now, in what you were just talking about, Paulo, in order to soar without the lid, so to speak, right? Adding the infrastructure in those communities to allow those businesses to soar. But what I have noticed is that we are expecting the David Faceys of the world to exist with crumbling school infrastructures in the areas of STEM, which is what helps build entrepreneurs like David. And so in the public school systems in urban communities, we have a lot of failing schools who are failing our next entrepreneurs like the Davids of the world. And so there is a need all across this country for a form of reparations. And I would look at the Asheville model and see how it ties to education, because it's a huge piece. And so if we're going to really talk about equity, if we're going to really talk about, and the crazy part about it is you would think that everybody would want these types of systems in place, because believe it or not, the people who are already making money are going to continue to make more when others are included in capitalistic society. If I ain't got the money to buy your product, well then you sitting up there, you're making this amount of money. But imagine if I was here and I'm a consumer, I'm buying, right? This is gonna push you up even more. And so I think we really do, and I saw somebody say rebrand. I think we really do need to rebrand what it looks like to help minority communities and the benefit that comes when we help sustain and build minority communities.
Thank you, Jerry. I like that idea of rebrand and find that right path forward. So that's great. So we've gone way over on our discussion time. It got very interesting there. We've got about 10 minutes for Q&A. Let's jump into our Q&A right now. Let's see. Well, our first question that was joined, I think that we've addressed it, but I just want to make sure that we have a chance to fully kind of embrace the concept, is how do we get people to stop insulting minority entrepreneurs and calling them disadvantaged? So the words that came up the better words were diverse and underutilized. What other vocabulary words can we make sure to incorporate and then sunset the ones that are not appropriate?
Wendy, can I
Minority
please,
is gone. It's
can I
past, needs
please
to be
jump in
gone.
on this? I'm gonna shut up. Can I please jump in? The reason why we are still calling businesses in the South disadvantaged business enterprises is because in the South they are. They are disadvantaged. And I know that it's not a politically correct term to use, but it is what it is. When you look at how for every one minority that gets a loan from a bank to start up its business, its counterpart is 7.
Right.
That's disadvantage to me. Whenever you look at one side of the track and you look at the other side of the track, and there are more banks on one street on Seaton Lane than there are in the whole district that I represent, of a whole half of a city, 100,000 residents in my district, right? Take Florida and march north, and everything you see in the city limits is in my district, right? There are more banks on one street in South Baton Rouge than there are in my whole. That's disadvantaged. Trust me, it's the correct term.
So just to piggyback on that, man, because I understand what you're saying with that, Jared. That's the reason why the efforts that we put in is to help those firms get outside of that. We currently have a business development program that we have some candidates that's in right now that's strengthening them to where it's a 2-year program. At the end of those 2 years, they're going to be able to position themselves to, number one, have a much better, much more qualified business plan as well as a financial plan, to where they can go into these banks with the confidence knowing that they can get the equity or the financial resources that they need to expand in those areas. So my effort is making sure, and my team, because I have a great team of individuals here at our firm, and also that have partnered with us on our contract. Some of you all know Ms. Savitra Wilson. She's on our team with this contract. We also got a marketing specialist, Ms. Megan, that does a lot of our marketing, because we offer free assistance to these small businesses to attack those areas. Because obviously, Jerry is correct. That's the terminology that's being said. The way we remove it, though, is by helping them become more qualified and not seeing it in that aspect. We can remove that much quicker when they're walking in the door and they're, number one, marketing themselves properly. But when they sit down at the table, they have everything, all their ducks in a row already. And it's not just being seen as, oh, they just in trucking, or they just in, grubbing, clearing and grubbing. No, they come with a strong portfolio that expands not only to those services as well. So I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying there, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to.
Oh, well.
Oh,
go on.
ahead.
Well,
I just wanted to jump in with two alternatives. One is, let's call it what it is, which is systemically oppressed. It's not.
Yeah.
So, and when you start speaking like that, I had a mentor, speaking of reparations, Ray Haysbert, who was the first Black man to bring a business into the stock exchange. And he also was a Tuskegee Airman. And he said to me, and this was 15, 20 years ago, he's passed since, but he said to me, well, you got to be careful about using the word reparations because it makes people want to run.
Yes.
And he said, well, I prefer to call it back pay, and which was an interesting thought, right? But I do think, but then when I was talking to him, we did also not, you had to whisper the word white supremacy when you were in certain places. And it's all over every TV, radio station, network, etc., talking about white supremacy now. So I think we're in a bit of a different time, and we can start calling things out for what they actually are. And this next thing I want to say is that I think language is huge, and we use the word minority. I've heard the word minority 20 times in today's conversation. Minority is a way of making us feel small and minor and insignificant, and it gets into our heads and into our consciousness. As far as I can tell, folk of color on the planet are such a vast majority that we need to get out of that. And we call minorities in Baltimore, it's a majority Black city, and their majority Black states are emerging and emerging. So, and it's funny because they always say minority and women, right? Which should give you a heads up, because women are the majority. They're 51+% of the population. So what is this thing that's being done to our, what I call, or what Bob Marley calls, our mental slavery? And I think we need to free ourselves from some of these notions and really call it, speak truthfully. It is oppression. It's not because we are small, and it is not because we are under whatever. We're overstressed and pressed on, and we need to get that pressure off so we can do our thing. I always get a little pulpity about that.
Thank you for that. That was actually the phrase that I was going to use, was that idea that there's definitely something wrong with the fact that there's no banks in Jerry's district. That's part of an overall problem. There's someone that I tried to get on as a panelist, but our schedules just didn't work out. But he works in Silicon Valley, and he works in investment on the east side of the Bay Area. And his thesis is that there is no wrong side of the tracks. It's just that there was deliberate design decisions that went into why one side of the track is like one way and the other side of the track is something else. And that there's no reason why we can't have abundant opportunity and proper economic development and property development on all sides of the track. It just takes deliberate and intentional thought. And I think that you said it probably more eloquently than I just did. Okay, we have time for probably one more question. I apologize that we didn't get through the questions. It was just such a juicy conversation. The the question is it possible to push state legislature to give DBEs more opportunities for growth and sustainability? What can the state do to bring Louisiana up to speed with wealthier and healthier small business ecosystems? You don't have any thoughts on that? We have no politicians on this call, so this is based on our own experience with the legislature and what we want.
It wouldn't matter if they was on the phone call. I tell them what I think all the time anyway. I will say this: I have seen glimpses and glimmers of hope from our state legislators recently in COVID-19 when they did the Louisiana Main Street Recovery Program, right? They could have figured out a ton of different ways to spend $275 million. And what they decided to do was to try to figure out a creative way of giving up to $15,000 in reimbursable funds to each and every business that applied. So I will say, I think the business community has been very, very, very vocal. Folks like Adam Knapp with BRAC, who has been at the table, Calvin Mills and myself, who are at the Restart BR committee for Map Room. These are those types of conversations that we're having. It's really difficult, and I think Kenyatta can speak to this as well. It is the types of businesses that we currently have in Louisiana that are African American owned. A lot of those businesses are not in a space where procurement opportunities with government contracts can truly be of benefit to them, right? And that kind of ties back to my belief that if we had stronger STEM programs in urban communities, that we would be able to have the type of developers and an increased amount of entrepreneurs that could go after those types of contracts that would service more of state contracts, right? And so we are, I hate to say this, but we are literally in a holding pattern, which is why Nexus is so important, which is why I get excited whenever I see stuff in the newspaper article about David and the things that he's doing, and so many of the other entrepreneurs that are doing what they're trying to do in Baton Rouge. But it's a tough, there's a mix of reality involved in this. There's only so many contractors that we have that fit what the government or the state could really purchase from them, right? And so as we identify barriers that that will keep them from being able to be successful, we're all a part of the same network, and we all tend to reach and lobby or advocate on behalf of businesses in order to try to figure out how to remove those barriers. But we're going to have to really work to help develop the next level of entrepreneurs in Louisiana, and to be able to kind of tie into what the government is doing far as procurement opportunities is concerned.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Unfortunately, we are at time, so I hate that I have to cut this short, but we are at time. So I want to thank all of our panelists: Kenyatta, Faye, David, Paulo, and Jerry. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our attendees and the active chat again. We love the conversation that's been happening. Thank you to our Nexus Louisiana team. Lauren Castine has been running behind the scenes with me, and the rest of our team as well that are watching and taking action steps and hearing what's been discussed, not only here with our panel, but also all the panels. And we'll be having further discussions about what we as an ecosystem and part of a group of partners that are all in this work together can do moving forward. Thank you to our sponsors, SLT Technology, Inc. and ExxonMobil. We appreciate that. And we do want to keep the conversation going. One way is for you to, if you want to get involved, you want to provide mentorship, you want to invest, you want to get better at working with minority businesses, you're a business owner and you want help with your business, fill out the I want to get involved button. And that is a way for us to curate and help match you with resources, because this is going to take everyone involved in this. And We are very grateful for all of the support of our community. And if you've missed any of our prior events, you can watch the videos. Once you're logged into Crowdcast, you'll be able to watch the videos from the September 10th and also our ones from Tuesday, Wednesday, and today again, and get caught up on the conversation. So we'll have all of our panelists share some contact information with the attendees if you want to get in touch with them. And we look forward to having further conversations about this. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care now.
All right.
Great to be with you.
Great to meet you all. Peace and blessings.